Have you ever felt that, even though you give your all, he simply can't truly see you? As if your light is on, but his eyes are closed? Maybe it's not your energy that's failing, but the words you're using. Because yes, the words you speak can either awaken or dim your feminine energy without you noticing. Today we're going to talk about a deeply transformative topic, the power of words to activate your feminine energy, that subtle, magnetic, intuitive energy that doesn't need to force anything to attract. And here comes the most surprising part. Every word you repeat creates a vibration, an emotion, and an identity. And when you choose the right words, you become that woman he just can't stop thinking about. This idea isn't new. One of the major voices in this field is Alonso Puig, doctor and international speaker, who has spent decades studying how the language we use can literally change our biology, our emotions, and our lives. He affirms that a single word can activate an inner power circuit that had been asleep until then. And that's exactly what you'll learn today. So if you want to raise your feminine energy from deep within, I invite you right now to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell, because this journey is only for those who are ready to see and feel themselves differently. Stay until the end, because today you'll discover 10 powerful words that won't just change your vibration, they might make them feel your presence, even when you're not around. Are you ready to transform your language and your energy? Let's begin. To truly understand the impact of these 10 words, we first need to explore a concept often misunderstood or reduced to cliches: feminine energy. This has nothing to do with gender or behavioral stereotypes. Feminine energy is a quality that exists in all human beings, regardless of sex. It's the part of us that intuits, that receives, that creates, that embraces mystery and flows with life. While masculine energy tends to seek direction, structure, control, and external purpose, feminine energy moves in a more inner, sensitive, emotional, receptive, and creative space. Both energies are necessary, complementary, and valuable. However, in a world that has favored action over contemplation, strength over softness, and logic over intuition, many people have learned to disconnect from their feminine energy out of fear of appearing weak, vulnerable, or unproductive. And this is where words play a key role. Language isn't just a tool for communication. It's also a technology of creation. What we say frequently, especially when repeated mentally, shapes beliefs. And those beliefs determine our emotions, our decisions, our relationships, and ultimately our energetic identity. In other words, if someone repeats internally, "I have to do everything alone," they unknowingly reinforce a programming based on effort, tension, and self-sacrifice that blocks their feminine energy. On the other hand, when they start saying and feeling phrases like, "I receive support with ease," or "I trust my intuition," they begin to unlock energetic channels that have been closed. This principle has been extensively explored by Dr. Alonso Puig, who has devoted much of his career to investigating the connection between mind, body, and language. As a surgeon, he combines scientific knowledge with a deep understanding of the emotional and spiritual dimensions of a human being. He explains that the brain doesn't distinguish between what is real and what is imagined if both are supported with the same emotional intensity. That is, if someone repeats with conviction a word like "I am," followed by a positive quality, their body begins to release neurotransmitters, hormones, and physiological reactions consistent with that thought. And if done consistently, that word becomes an instruction that reorganizes their internal biology. That's how powerful one word is. Alonso Puig also points out that feminine energy, when activated, doesn't need to impose or compete. It doesn't demand, beg, or force. It simply is. It manifests in presence, in the vibration someone transmits when they feel secure in themselves, when they allow vulnerability, when they trust their worth without needing to prove it. And words are one of the master keys to return to that essence. Because when we speak a word, we're not just naming something. We are activating an energetic pattern, and that pattern becomes frequency. That frequency is what others perceive, even if we're not aware that we're emitting IT in this sense. The words we use daily can become either allies or invisible enemies. There are words that connect us to lack, to struggle, to fear, or to the need for external validation. And there are others that reconnect us with abundance, flow, creativity, self-love, and authentic attraction. These are the words we are going to explore in this video. But before we get to them, it's important to understand an essential principle. Language can also be an act of healing. Reprogramming internal language is not just about replacing words with prettier ones. It's a deep process of emotional re-education. It means observing automatic thoughts, often inherited from childhood, culture, or past experiences, and beginning to replace them with new affirmations that align with what we truly want to feel and attract. For example, if someone grew up hearing "don't depend on anyone" or "don't show your emotions," it's likely they build a shield of self-sufficiency that prevents them from receiving love with ease. Changing that narrative means using new words that generate a different emotion, a feeling of openness, availability, and trust. And when that emotion is activated repeatedly, the body begins to align with that new frequency. Mario Alonso Puig explains that this transformation is possible thanks to the brain's neuroplasticity. In other words, the brain can create new neural connections throughout life, especially when three key factors are combined: a powerful word, an intense emotion, and sustained repetition. It's not enough to say something once. You have to feel it, believe it, and sustain it. Only then does language stop being a superficial affirmation and become deep programming. And this programming is what determines the energy we radiate, even without speaking. Feminine energy, by nature, vibrates in a state of presence, openness, and magnetism. It does not need to justify its worth or ask permission to shine. But many people have learned to distrust this energy, to believe that being soft equals being weak, that receiving is a sign of dependence, that showing vulnerability is dangerous. That's why language can be the path to reconnect with that essential part that was once denied or repressed. Saying, "I deserve, I blossom, I trust, I receive," or "I shine" is not just a linguistic act. It's a declaration of identity. And each time it's spoken from the heart, a small internal revolution begins. Another fundamental teaching from Mario Alonso Puig is that the body listens to everything we say. The cells, the organs, the nervous system all respond to the kind of internal dialogue we maintain. If we repeat phrases like, "I can't," "I'm not enough," or "this is hard," the body goes into contraction, defense, and alert. On the other hand, if we repeat "I can," "I'm ready," or "everything flows in my favor," the body responds with openness, calm, and vitality. It's as if each word had the power to open or close inner doors. And when it comes to connecting with feminine energy, those doors relate to the heart, intuition, creativity, and worthiness. This is not about denying the negative or forcing artificial positivity. It's about consciously choosing what kind of reality we want to nourish with our words. Because what we say becomes what we feel, and what we feel becomes what we project. And that's what we attract. That's simple. That deep. That's why this video doesn't aim to give you a fleeting motivational speech, but a practical tool for transformation. The 10 words we will explore next are designed to act like switches. Each of them can help you awaken a dormant quality, unblock a stagnant emotion, or reconnect with a part of yourself you may have forgotten. And when you start using these words with awareness, you realize that you don't need to change everything outside. You just need to change what's happening inside. And that changes everything. Returning to your feminine energy doesn't mean becoming passive or weak. It means returning to yourself, recognizing that your power is not in effort or control, but in the vibration you emit when you are in harmony with yourself. And that harmony begins with the words you choose, because every word you speak is a seed. If you plant words of confidence, security will bloom. If you plant words of abundance, prosperity will grow. If you plant words of love, you will attract relationships where you can love without fear and be loved without conditions. Now that you understand how language shapes your energy and how feminine energy is enhanced through what you say and what you feel as you say it, you are ready to begin the journey through these 10 powerful words. Each word will be an invitation to look inward, to rewrite your story, and to transform your vibration from the subtlest level. So get ready, because the first word we will explore has the power to completely change your self-image and your ability to receive authentic love. That word is "I deserve," and everything starts there. "I deserve" is one of the most powerful words that exists when it comes to reconnecting with feminine energy. Not because of its sound, nor because of its etymology, but because of the direct effect it has on a person's self-image, emotional structure, and energy field. Saying "I deserve" and truly feeling it can be, for many, a revolutionary act, because it means recognizing something that has been denied or conditioned for years, the right to receive good things without guilt, without struggle, and without justification. For a long time, many people have grown up with the belief that they must earn love, respect, or happiness, that they must do something extraordinary to be worthy of affection, that only if they try hard enough or sacrifice themselves for others will they then deserve a bit of well-being. This kind of programming is instilled very early in childhood through explicit or implicit messages like love must be earned, others come first, don't be selfish, or if you do things right, you'll be rewarded. And so, without realizing it, we often carry that structure into adulthood, even into our romantic relationships. I deserve cuts that narrative of emotional scarcity at the root. It is a word that affirms an inner right, non-negotiable, unconditional, when said with conviction. It activates an energy of self-affirmation that transforms the way one shows up in the world. It's not about entitlement or arrogance. It's about remembering that life doesn't demand suffering in order to be valuable, that it is not necessary to pay with pain to access what is beautiful, that the good things can also come through softness, through alignment, through self-love. From an energetic perspective, I deserve unblocks the emotional center that regulates giving and receiving. Feminine energy, by its receptive nature, flows more fully when there's a real openness to deserving. But if someone is closed off to receiving, even unconsciously, that energy becomes stagnant, weakened, or distorted. And often, that resistance to receiving comes disguised as humility, self-sufficiency, or control. There are those who reject compliments, minimize achievements, delay desires, or settle for less for one simple reason: because deep down, they don't believe they deserve more. Mario Alonso Puig explains this clearly when he says that language creates neural maps, and that those maps determine our emotional pathways. If someone has repeated for years, "I'm not worthy," "that's not for me," or "others deserve it more," their brain has created a pattern of lack and self-exclusion. And even if they consciously want to change their reality, if they continue to operate from that linguistic base, it will be hard to sustain a deep transformation. On the other hand, when they begin to introduce words like, "I deserve love," "I deserve rest," "I deserve respect," "I deserve beauty," they start building new internal routes that connect with abundance, dignity, and openness. The impact of this word goes beyond the personal. It directly affects how someone relates to others. Because someone who feels they deserve doesn't beg, doesn't manipulate, doesn't settle for crumbs, doesn't stay where they're not valued, and doesn't need to constantly prove their worth. Deserving generates an inner peace that translates into external magnetism. A person who feels they deserve radiates a quiet confidence, a security that neither competes nor demands, but that is deeply felt. And that is profoundly attractive. A story that illustrates this principle can help us understand its power. Let's imagine Clara, a talented, sensitive, generous woman with a family history marked by extreme effort. From a young age, she learned that everything had to come at a cost, that rest was selfish, and that receiving help was a sign of weakness. In her relationships, this showed up subtly but consistently. She chose unavailable partners, gave more than she received, and felt uncomfortable when someone offered her something without expecting anything in return. One day, during a conversation with a therapist, she heard this phrase for the first time: "You don't have to do anything to deserve love. You already deserve it just for existing." Something in her broke and opened at the same time. She began practicing in front of the mirror, "I deserve the best," without having to suffer for it. At first, it felt ridiculous. Her voice trembled. But over time, that phrase began to resonate with strength. Her posture changed, her gaze too, and little by little, she began making choices more aligned with her well-being. She left relationships that no longer added value, allowed herself to ask for help, celebrated her achievements, and stopped minimizing her needs. It all began with one word: deserve. This example is not unique. Many people have experienced a deep transformation when they integrate this word into their daily life. But for it to work, it's not enough to repeat it mechanically. It must be charged with emotional intention, felt in the body, its effects visualized. Imagine for a moment that you are in front of a mirror. You look into your own eyes and say, I deserve to be loved with tenderness. What do you feel? How does your body react? Is there resistance? Is there shame? Are there tears? All of that is valuable information. The emotions that arise when we say, I deserve, show us our level of disconnection or openness toward our own worth. Mario Alonso Puig explains that the body needs clear and sustained signals to activate new emotional circuits. One effective way to integrate this word is through repeated affirmations in a relaxed state. For example, right after waking up or before falling asleep, breathe deeply, close your eyes, and mentally say, I deserve all the good life has to offer me. I deserve to feel at peace. I deserve to be surrounded by people who value me. I deserve to fulfill my dreams. Repeat these phrases not as an empty mantra, but as an act of deep reconnection. Another powerful way to work with this word is to write it in different contexts. For instance, make a list of 10 things you feel you deserve. Even if you don't yet have them, the simple act of writing them down can reveal inner blocks or limiting beliefs that have been operating silently. You can also use deserve as a guiding word in decision-making. Before accepting an invitation, committing to a task, or staying in a relationship, ask yourself, does this reflect what I feel I deserve? This question, although simple, can prevent a lot of emotional strain and help maintain a state of coherence. From a more symbolic perspective, I deserve can also be seen as a key that opens a door to the heart. Feminine energy doesn't bloom in the terrain of pressure or guilt. It blooms when it feels safe, recognized, cared for, and that sense of safety begins from within. It's not about waiting for someone to value us in order to feel deserving. It's about declaring that worth from within, and from there, attracting experiences aligned with that vibration. In the words of Mario Alonso Puig, language is not a reflection of reality. It is a tool to create reality. And when the word deserve is chosen as a daily seed, as a conscious affirmation, as a starting point, it activates a transformation that goes beyond the mind. The body feels it. The voice transmits it. Relationships reflect it. Because a person who recognizes their worth begins to build healthier bonds, to choose better, to take better care of themselves, to say no without guilt, and to say yes without fear. Deserve is, then, a declaration of inner power, a word that reconnects with the deep dignity of being, a healing tool that can completely change how one relates to love, to work, to rest, to pleasure, and to life itself. It's not magic, it's awareness, and that awareness, sustained over time, has a magnetic impact. Because when someone says from the heart, I deserve, their vibration changes. And when their vibration changes, the world responds differently. Now that you have understood the power of this first word, get ready to discover the second, a word that activates creative energy, sensuality, and a natural process of personal evolution. That word is, I bloom. If I deserve acts as a seed that acknowledges the right to receive what is good, I bloom is the moment when that seed begins to open. It is the expression of expansion, of natural growth, of beauty that needs no permission or approval to manifest. Blooming is a silent act of power. It is not about shouting or impressing. It is simply about allowing what was held back by fear, judgment, or rigidity to unfold. I bloom is a word that connects directly with creative, sensual, and evolutionary energy. In nature, everything blooms when its time comes. There is no rush. There is no anxiety. There is no comparison. A flower doesn't ask if it's blooming better or worse than another. It just opens. This image is deeply symbolic because it reminds us that we also have internal rhythms, maturation times, natural cycles that need to be respected. But in a society that rewards speed, productivity, and immediate results, blooming becomes something that is often postponed. Many people are so focused on surviving, on performing, on adapting, that they forget the possibility of blooming. I bloom is, then, a declaration of presence in the midst of hurry. It is a way of saying, I am growing from within. I allow myself to show my essence. I no longer hide. This word invites us to leave behind rigidity, self-demand, fear of judgment, and to embrace a more organic, freer, more radiant version of ourselves. Blooming doesn't mean being perfect or being at the top. It means being in process, in transformation, in openness. Mario Alonso Puig often speaks about how the internal environment can either condition or free our capacity for expansion. He explains that human beings have an extraordinary potential for transformation, but that this potential is often blocked by excess criticism, fear of failure, or low self-worth. From this perspective, blooming is not an external goal, but an internal state that is reached when layers of fear, shame, or guilt dissolve. And language, as we've seen, is one of the most powerful instruments to facilitate that process. Saying, "I bloom" out loud or silently, again and again, is not an empty affirmation. It is a decision to stop shrinking, to stop withering in order to please others, to stop waiting for everything to be perfect before showing up. It is a declaration of life. When someone starts using this word consciously, they are sending a signal to their emotional system. I allow myself to grow without fear, and that permission activates internal processes that can have profound effects. More clarity, more vital energy, more joy, more magnetism. There's a kind of beauty that doesn't depend on external standards. It is the beauty that arises when someone is connected with their essence. That beauty isn't imposed or disguised. It radiates, and blooming is precisely that, radiating what one truly is. When someone says, "I bloom," they are also saying, "I no longer adapt to what others expect of me. I no longer hide behind guilt or shame. I show myself in my real colors." And that is deeply attractive, not only in romantic terms, but also in the way people start to respond, to take interest, to feel inspired by that authentic presence. Feminine energy has a very direct relationship with this word because it is linked to creativity, sensuality, and the circular movement of life. When someone blooms, they also begin to create, and not necessarily in the artistic sense, but in the broader one, creating spaces, bonds, ideas, opportunities. Blooming is an expansion that touches every area of life, and at the same time, it awakens a subtler and more powerful form of attraction. Because when someone blooms, they don't need to chase. The energy they radiate is already attracting what resonates with it. A story can illustrate this process. Let's imagine Elena, a person who for years lived focused on pleasing others. At work, she was efficient. In her family, she was always available. In her relationships, she tried to fit in, but internally, she felt that a part of herself was asleep. She had abandoned her passions, her desires, even her natural way of expressing herself. One day at a retreat, she heard the phrase, "Your soul is ready to bloom." Something was ignited in her. She began an internal process of reconnection with what truly gave her life. Music, art, movement, contact with nature. And she started using the word, "I bloom," as a mantra. Every morning, upon waking, she repeated it. At first, it was a symbolic act, but over time, she began to notice it in her energy, in her posture, in her gaze. She started attracting experiences more aligned with her true essence, and it all began with the decision to bloom. To bloom also means to let go, because for something new to grow, something old must fall away. A flower cannot open if it clings to its previous form. Saying "I bloom" is also an act of courage. It is accepting that not everything can be controlled, that growth sometimes hurts, that showing up as you are involves some exposure, some risk. But it is also understanding that the greatest risk is to remain hidden, that there is no fulfillment without openness, and that blooming, although it comes with certain challenges, always leads to a place of greater truth and freedom. From a biological standpoint, Mario Alonso Puig explains that the body expands or contracts depending on dominant emotions. Emotions like joy, gratitude, and curiosity generate expansion. Emotions like fear, guilt, or shame generate contraction. Blooming is a process that requires creating a favorable emotional environment, and that can be cultivated through small daily practices. For example, asking yourself each day, what part of me want to bloom today? Or writing in a journal 3 things you did that day which represent an expression of expansion, no matter how small, a word you didn't dare say before, a decision you had delayed, an idea you finally shared. It is also useful to observe body language. Blooming is not just a mental attitude. It is a posture. It's how you walk, how you breathe, how you look. A person who blooms feels alive, present, connected, and that is conveyed even without words. But when that energy is combined with the conscious use of language, the effect is amplified. Saying, I bloom, while taking a deep breath, opening the chest, and looking openly can be a transformative practice. It takes less than a minute, but its impact accumulates over time. Using this word in everyday context also has a powerful effect. Saying I bloom before entering a meeting, starting an important conversation, or beginning a new day is a way to align your energy with an expansive intention. And when it is repeated frequently enough, the brain begins to associate with a specific emotional state. It becomes an anchor, an internal reference. And little by little, blooming stops being a wish and becomes a real experience. Feminine energy needs space to bloom. It cannot do so in rigid environments, in suffocating relationships, or in routines that extinguish it. Saying I bloom also implies making conscious choices. Which spaces nourish me, which connections expand me, which activities connect me to my center. Not everything can be changed all at once, but even small adjustments can open the ground for something new to grow. And that is the essence of this word, growth. Blooming is not a final state. It is a continuous process. There are moments of openness, of expansion, and also moments of pause, of retreat. But even in those more introspective moments, one can continue blooming from within, because blooming is not always seen, but it is always felt. And when that intention is held consistently, the results become visible. The skin changes, the gaze shines, the words become softer and firmer at the same time. Everything in your energy begins to vibrate at a higher frequency. Saying, I bloom, is also a way to honor the path traveled. We don't bloom by denying the past, but by integrating it. Every wound, every fall, every renunciation can become compost for something greater if it is transformed into awareness. Blooming is not forgetting what hurt, but allowing that to nourish a new version of yourself, a more authentic, freer, more alive version. So each time you say this word, remember that you are not repeating a nice idea. You are activating a process. You are giving permission. You are saying yes to your expansion. You are affirming that your time is now, that your truth matters, that your presence deserves to be seen, and that, when done from the heart, changes everything. Now take a deep breath and tell me in the comments, in what area of your life do you feel ready to bloom? Write it with the phrase, I bloom, and affirm it with strength. Reading your statement may inspire others to open up too. Let's create together an unstoppable energy of expansion. The third word will take us even deeper in this journey of reconnection with feminine energy. It is a word that opens internal space to stop controlling and begin to trust. That word is, I trust. It is not just a word. It is an inner decision. Trusting is not something that is automatically felt. It is an act of will. It is making space for uncertainty without fear. And in that act, a deep inner force is activated, almost invisible but real. Trust is the foundation upon which authentic feminine energy is built. Without trust, energy closes, defends, hardens. With trust, energy flows, relaxes, surrenders. And in that flow, something essential appears. True attraction. When you say, I trust, you are doing something greater than simply affirming confidence. You are saying, I surrender to life. I accept what I cannot control. I believe in my worth even when things are uncertain. And that is tremendously powerful, because feminine energy is not built through control. It is built through conscious surrender, not as weakness, but as a deep connection with life, with inner wisdom, with an intelligence greater than immediate logic. In the words of Mario Alonso Puig, trust is not just a psychological feeling. It is also a biological state. When a person trusts, their body responds by releasing endorphins, oxytocin, serotonin. The nervous system regulates itself. The heart beats more coherently. The immune system strengthens. On the other hand, when someone lives in constant distrust, the fight or flight response is activated, cortisol levels spike, breathing becomes shallower, and a state of ongoing tension is generated. Trust is not only emotionally healthy, it is also physically healthy. But how does one learn to trust when experience has taught the opposite? How to trust if there have been betrayals, disappointments, failures? This is where the word, I trust, takes on a transformative dimension. Because it's not about trusting blindly in everything or everyone. It's about first learning to trust oneself. And that begins with small acts of coherence. Every time a person listens to themselves, respects themselves, chooses themselves, they strengthen their inner trust. And from that foundation, they can begin to trust life, the process, the idea that everything has meaning, even what is not yet understood. Saying "I trust" is a way to stand firm from within. It's accepting that not everything can be predicted or controlled, but that one has a capacity to respond with wisdom, with calm, with openness. When someone lives in distrust mode, everything around them becomes a threat. When they begin to cultivate trust, the world becomes a safer, more accessible, more livable place. This internal transformation is reflected externally, in posture, in tone of voice, in the decisions one makes, and above all, in the quality of the relationships one attracts. Feminine energy blooms when there is trust, because trust allows one to open up to others without needing excessive protection. It allows one to feel without fear of being judged. It allows one to receive without staying in a state of alert. And that, in a relationship, is felt immediately. A person who trusts emits a vibration of emotional stability, calm security, and presence, and that generates a deeper, more authentic connection. One example can illustrate this clearly. Let's imagine Sophia, someone who had several relationships marked by distrust. She would check her partner's phone, doubt his words, feel the need to control everything. This exhausted her, and unintentionally, she sabotaged relationships that could have been healthy. One day, during a self-awareness process, she realized that her lack of trust wasn't in others, it was in herself. She didn't trust her intuition, her ability to set boundaries, her own worth. She began to work with the word, "I trust." Each day she repeated it in front of the mirror. "I trust myself. I trust my intuition. I trust that everything aligns." At first, she didn't fully believe it, but over time something started to shift. She no longer felt the need to control. She listened more, judged less, and as a result, her relationships began to heal. Because when a person trusts in themselves, they also allow others to show up more authentically. Mario Alonso Puig points out that one of the most effective ways to build inner trust is through coherence between thought, emotion, and action. When what one thinks aligns with what one feels and what one does, a sense of internal solidity is generated. And that coherence can be trained, practiced, strengthened. It's not something magical. It's a choice renewed every day. Using the word "I trust" in daily language can be a powerful tool to reprogram this attitude. For example, upon waking, one can say, "I trust that this day will bring what I need." Before a difficult conversation, "I trust that I'll know how to express myself clearly." When facing uncertainty, "I trust that life is guiding me to the best." These affirmations don't eliminate challenges, but they change the way we face them, and that makes all the difference. Another useful exercise is to write a different phrase starting with "I trust" for 7 days, not repeating the same one, but exploring new dimensions of the word. "I trust my inner voice. I trust that the universe conspires in my favor. I trust that I deserve what I desire. I trust that my process has meaning. I trust that I can love without losing myself." This exercise not only activates trust, but also reveals the areas where it most needs to be strengthened. Energetically, each time the word "I trust" is spoken, the vibrational field relaxes. The invisible tension that sometimes surrounds a person softens. That softness can be felt, and in the context of a relationship, it is key, because when someone conveys trust, they allow the other person to also relax, to express themselves, to connect from a more genuine place. There's no manipulation, no strategy, no masks. There's only presence and emotional availability. Trust also has a spiritual dimension. To trust doesn't mean to stop acting, but to act without attachment to the outcome. It means giving your best, but letting go of a need to control what happens. It is knowing that every experience, even the hardest one, brings a lesson. It is choosing to live from faith instead of fear. And that faith doesn't need to be religious. It is enough that it's an inner certainty that everything makes sense, even when it's not clearly seen. When someone says "I trust," they are also saying, "I release the need to have all the answers." and that opens space for intuition. Because intuition doesn't activate in the middle of mental noise, but in the inner silence that arises when one relaxes and listens. Feminine energy is deeply linked to intuition, and trust is the key that gives access to that wisdom. In emotional relationships, the lack of trust is often one of the deepest sources of conflict. But many times the problem is not outside. It lies in the relationship each person has with themselves. When one doesn't trust their own judgment, their capacity to face pain, or their right to be treated with love, they become dependent on the behavior of others. Life is lived from fear, from vigilance, from the need for constant proof. But when inner trust is strengthened, everything changes. One can love freely. One can say no without guilt. One can be present without fear of loss. That's why repeating "I trust" is not just a phrase. It's a tool for transformation. It is an invitation to live from a place that is more open, more secure, more wise. It is a reminder that one is not alone, that there's intelligence in the body, in the mind, in life, that guides, accompanies, sustains. And when one chooses to trust, even amid uncertainty, that trust becomes a magnetic field that attracts what is aligned with it. The fourth powerful word in this journey of transformation is "I receive." It may seem simple at first glance, but it holds a deep challenge. Receiving is not as easy as it seems. For many people, it is more comfortable to give, to offer, to solve, to control. There is something that feels safe in giving, because it implies holding control of the situation. But receiving requires a different posture, an openness, an inner willingness to drop defenses, to trust that one is worthy, to allow the good to come in. That's why "I receive" is not just a passive word. It is an active affirmation of powerful vulnerability, a declaration of readiness to experience love, support, joy, and abundance without having to constantly work to deserve them. Feminine energy by nature is receptive. This doesn't mean it is passive or submissive. It means it has a unique ability to absorb, transform, and expand what it receives. However, many people have repressed this part of themselves because they learned that receiving is dangerous. Maybe at some point, receiving created debt dependency or even disappointment. That's why, unconsciously, many people have armored themselves. They built inner barriers that stop them from opening up to others, to pleasure, to abundance, even to compliments. And it's not out of pride, but out of fear. Because opening up means becoming exposed, and being exposed can hurt. But it is also the only way to truly feel. When the word "I receive" is spoken, it deactivates a programming based on hyperindependence, on self-sacrifice, and on the false belief that everything must be earned through suffering. It's an affirmation that says, I don't have to do everything alone. I'm not here only to give. I also allow myself to be nourished, supported, surprised. It's a word that restores a natural balance between giving and receiving, because only when both energies are in harmony can one experience fullness. Mario Alonso Puig has often emphasized that the body and mind need positive experiences to be nourished, not just challenges to be strengthened. Receiving is not a luxury. It's an emotional and biological need. When a person allows themselves to receive a sincere hug, a kind word, a moment of beauty, their nervous system regulates, their life energy rises, and their self-esteem strengthens. However, if that person constantly rejects what life offers, out of feeling unworthy, fear of owing something in return, or being too busy giving others, they become drained, they wither, they disconnect from themselves. It's important to understand that receiving also requires presence. One cannot truly receive if they're distracted, tense, or emotionally closed. Often the good arrives, but it passes by because the person is not available to recognize it. That's why integrating the word "I receive" into daily practice is not just a verbal exercise. It's a training in openness. It's about cultivating an inner attitude of acceptance, of gratitude, of emotional readiness. It's about saying yes to what nourishes, without overanalyzing everything, without needing to justify every gift life offers. An example can make this idea more visible. Let's imagine Laura, a strong, responsible person, used to holding up everyone around her. Since childhood, she felt the need to care for others, to anticipate their needs, to keep things in order. Over time, that ability became her identity. Always available, always efficient. but also silently always alone, because in her mind, receiving was a sign of weakness. She didn't know how to ask for help. It was hard for her to accept a compliment. When someone offered her something without her asking, she would reject or downplay it, until one day, her body started sending her the bill. Chronic fatigue, insomnia, a constant sense of emptiness. At that point, she decided to begin a process of reconnection. One of the first tools she discovered was working with affirmations, and she chose a single word as a starting point: receive. At first, it was hard. She cried when she said it. It felt strange, but she continued. Every day, upon waking, she whispered, "I receive all the good that life has for me," and little by little, without noticing, she began to change. She accepted help. She listened without interrupting. She allowed herself to be surprised. And with each small act, she began restoring an energy that had been blocked for years. This kind of story is not unusual. Many people have trained themselves throughout life to give everything and ask for little. But that dynamic, although it may seem noble, is unsustainable. Because giving without receiving is exhausting. And receiving without guilt brings balance. Feminine energy doesn't flourish in constant sacrifice. It flourishes when there is flow, when there is exchange, when there is emotional nourishment. I receive doesn't mean expecting others to do everything for you. It means being willing to be touched by what is good, what is beautiful, what is unexpected. It means allowing life in without unnecessary resistance. From a neuropsychological perspective, Mario Alonso Puig has shown how the words we use directly influence the body's chemistry. By repeating with intention words like, "I receive," brain circuits related to pleasure, connection, and trust are activated. And over time, those repetitions create new neural networks that change the way we perceive reality. This is an abstract theory. It's a measurable process. The openness to receive can even be seen in the way a person breathes, walks, expresses themselves. A person who allows themselves to receive has a softer, more magnetic, more present energy, and that presence is deeply attractive. A simple practice to start activating this word is, each night before sleep, to make a short mental or written list of 3 things received during the day. They can be big or small: a smile, a message, a meal, a sense of calm. The simple act of recognizing what was received already begins to dissolve the scarcity programming. You can also practice the art saying thank you with more awareness, not as an automatic formula, but as an affirmation of, "I receive and value what comes to me." Over time, this kind of gesture re-educates the emotional system and opens new spaces of well-being. Another important key is to recognize that receiving doesn't always imply something external. One can also receive internally, an idea, an inspiration, an emotion, a moment of clarity. Practicing internal receptivity means taking pauses, breathing with awareness, listening to the body, allowing emotions to be expressed without judgment. When a person becomes receptive to their inner world, they also become more receptive to the outer world. And in that double openness, feminine energy is enhanced. In relational terms, the ability to receive is fundamental to building healthy connections. Many times, relationships become unbalanced because one person takes on a full role of giving and the other of receiving, creating toxic or draining dynamics. But when both sides allow themselves to give and receive consciously, a much more nurturing emotional flow is generated. Saying "I receive" in a relationship is also a way of saying, "I trust you, I value what you offer, I allow myself to be cared for," and that attitude strengthens intimacy, respect, and emotional connection. An important reflection is that receiving is not a reward. You don't have to wait to be perfect, or to have given everything, or to have everything under control to deserve good things. The internal language that says "not yet," "when I finish this," "when I've done better," is a disguised form of self-demand that blocks life's flow. "I receive" is a word that breaks that endless waiting. It is a present tense affirmation. I receive now, I open now, I am available now. Because the moment to receive is not tomorrow, nor when everything is perfect. It is here, now, in this very moment. The energy generated by repeating this word consistently is deeply transformative. A person who trains themselves to receive begins to experience more synchronicities, more meaningful encounters, more sensations of fullness. Not because the world has changed, but because their vibration has changed. And that new vibration acts like a magnet for experiences more aligned with their well-being. Receive also has a spiritual dimension. It means saying yes to life as it is, not just receiving what feels pleasant, but also being willing to receive the lessons, the learning, even what seems uncomfortable, because everything that arrives has something to offer. And when one lives from receptivity, a sensitivity develops that allows any experience to become growth. This does not mean resignation. It means wisdom. Finally, it's important to understand that receiving does not imply passivity. It is an active stance of openness, of listening, of sensitivity. It is a form of emotional leadership that does not need to impose itself, but simply to be available. And that availability is magnetic. It's what makes a person seen, valued, and remembered without trying to stand out. So when one says, "I receive," it is not just a word being spoken. A door is opened, space is made. A deep and wise part of oneself is honored, one that knows fulfillment doesn't come from constant effort, but from connection with life's natural flow. And from that connection, all that is needed arrives, because the universe responds not to need, but to openness. And that openness begins with a single word: receive. Pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, what is hardest for you to receive without guilt? Love, help, recognition, pleasure, rest. Write it in the comments, beginning with the phrase, "Today I allow myself to receive," and complete it with full honesty. By doing so, you are planting a new openness within yourself. If this message touched something inside you, give us a like and subscribe to keep awakening your feminine energy word by word. Your transformation has already begun. Let's continue. The fifth powerful word is play. On the surface, it may seem like a light, even naive word, but in truth it holds a subtle and transformative force that, when activated, has the power to restore vitality, magnetism, and joy to everyday life. Play does not refer only to entertainment or leisure. Its true meaning has to do with an attitude toward life, a way of inhabiting the present with curiosity, creativity, and spontaneity. It is an energy that recalls the freedom of childhood, when one could explore without fear of making mistakes, without needing external approval, simply for the joy of being. Feminine energy is nourished by play because in it there is no demand, no goal, no outcome. There is only presence, flow, and enjoyment. However, for many people, the word play has been replaced by others that became dominant in adult life: obligation, duty, effort, control. And when that happens, energy becomes heavy, tense, predictable. The connection with mystery is lost, with spontaneous laughter, with the possibility of living each experience with fresh eyes. To integrate play as an attitude doesn't mean becoming irresponsible, but rather regaining the ability to enjoy without needing to justify everything. Mario Alonso Puig has spoken many times about the importance of humor, enjoyment, and wonder in emotional and physical health. From neuroscience, it's known that when a person allows themselves to play, even in everyday life, their brain releases dopamine, strengthens neural connections, and reduces stress. Play is not an escape. It is a smart way to activate inner resources that are often asleep due to routine. And in the context of feminine energy, it represents permission to inhabit joy without guilt, to seduce effortlessly, to explore without fear of failure. To say "I play" is a way to declare that one is alive, that one chooses to release, even briefly, the rigidity of imposed roles, social masks, and external expectations. Play allows reconnection with the most authentic and radiant part of self, the one that doesn't aim to be perfect, but simply to express. And that free expression, not controlled or contained, is deeply attractive because it has the freshness of what is real. When a person allows themselves to play, their energy shifts. It becomes lighter, more present, more magnetic. A story that illustrates this transformation is Andrea's. After several years focused on work, responsibility, and perfectionism, she began to feel empty. Everything seemed in order: a stable job, proper relationships, a predictable life. But something was missing. She had lost a spark in her eyes, the easy laughter, the feeling of everyday adventure. In a conversation with a therapist, a key question arose. When was the last time you did something just for the pleasure of doing it? She didn't know how to answer. From that moment on, she began to include small playful gestures in her daily life. Dancing while cooking, drawing nonsense, walking without a destination, singing out loud. At first, she felt silly, even ridiculous. But soon she noticed a change in her energy. She felt more alive, more spontaneous. And interestingly, she began to attract new situations and people more aligned with her renewed emotional state. It had all started with a simple decision: to play again. This example shows that play is not a luxury reserved for childhood. It is an emotional need to maintain vitality and authenticity. Feminine energy, when connected to play, regains its most seductive quality, mystery, because the play is to move lightly in a world that insists on seriousness. It is allowing imagination to have a place again. It is transforming the ordinary into a stage for creation. Play also means allowing oneself to explore new facets of self. In a society that rewards productivity, doing something with no clear goal can seem useless. But many times, in those spaces without a defined purpose, the most valuable things arise: a brilliant idea, a new emotion, an unexpected connection. Play opens doors that control shuts. And in relationships, that translates into more spontaneity, less drama, more authentic connection. From a more symbolic perspective, play represents movement, and feminine energy is essentially movement. Not linear, not structure, but circular, shifting, dancing. Play activates that dance. When someone plays, their body loosens, their voice changes, their gaze becomes more open. It is as if invisible layers of rigidity are shed, and that change does not go unnoticed. It is perceived, felt, and contagious. Another way to understand this word is through the body. How many times has the body been lived as an instrument of control, of demand, of criticism? Play gives the body back its dimension of pleasure. Dancing, stretching, moving without a specific aim, simply for the joy of feeling, is a way of coming home. And when the body feels free, feminine energy ignites. It needs no permission. It seeks no approval. It simply expresses. Mario Alonso Puig insists that laughter, humor, and lightness are not accessories to life. They are essential for integral health. In his talks, he shares how even in serious medical situations, people who maintain a playful attitude tend to have better immune responses, better emotional recovery, greater resilience. Play doesn't deny reality. It transforms it. It's not about ignoring problems, but about not letting them define the entire experience. Incorporating the word play into everyday life can start with very simple things. Using creativity in tasks that seem routine. Taking a different route home. Doing something poorly but laughing while doing it. Sharing a made-up story. Allowing mistakes. Play does not require results, only willingness. And in that willingness, a spark is lit that rekindles inner energy. In the emotional realm, play is a fundamental component of deep connection. Relationships that lose play become heavy, predictable, tense. When play is present, there is room for complicity, surprise, spontaneous seduction. There's no need for grand plans. Sometimes a playful look, an unexpected phrase, a different dynamic is enough. Play opens the heart, relaxes the body, connects people from a lighter and more sincere place. It is also important to remember that to play implies trust. One only truly plays when fear of judgment is released, and that requires inner security that is cultivated. Sometimes, to be able to play, one must go through initial discomfort, the inner voice that says this is ridiculous, you look silly, you're too old for this. But if the intention is sustained, that voice loses power, and behind it a deeper, older feeling emerges, the soul expressing itself freely. From an energetic standpoint, to play is to move stagnant vibration. It is to unblock emotions, release tension, open the vital flow. Many times, sadness, anger, or anxiety are symptoms of stuck energy, and play acts as a soft, natural, effective channel of release. It doesn't need to be rationalized, only felt. The body knows how to play. It just needs to be allowed. That's why repeating the word play with intention can become an inner key, one that opens a door to joy, to the present, to the authentic. You can practice by saying it when you wake. Today I play with life, or before important talk. I play with words with presence, or simply as a reminder, I play because I am alive. Over time, this word becomes an attitude, and that attitude transforms the way one relates to everything. To play is also a form of resilience, because one who plays doesn't get trapped in the rigidity of outcomes. They learn to move, to adapt, to reinvent themselves. And in that constant motion, there is growth, there is evolution, there is beauty. The word play, then, is not an invitation to escape reality, but to inhabit it from another place. A place where one can laugh without asking permission, where one can make mistakes without punishment, where one can experiment without pressure. And from there, feminine energy finds one of its most powerful channels for expression. Playing is not wasting time. It is reclaiming it. It is reminding oneself that life, with all that it implies, can also be light, joyful, magical. That not everything must hurt to have value. That joy is also a form of wisdom. And that wisdom begins to unfold when one allows oneself simply to play. The sixth powerful word is shine. This word, often associated with the external, the visible, or the aesthetic, actually holds a much deeper and more transformative meaning. To shine is not about standing out above others, nor about competing for attention, nor about turning on artificial lights to appear more. To shine, in its true essence, means to allow the inner light to express itself naturally. It is to live from authenticity, from confidence, and from a presence that does not need to shout to be noticed. True shine is not imposed, it radiates, and when it is activated, it creates a magnetic effect that attracts effortlessly because it resonates with something genuine, alive, unique. Saying shine is to affirm a willingness to show oneself as one is, without exaggeration but without hiding. It is to stop minimizing one's talents, qualities, ideas out of fear of discomfort, fear of judgment, or fear of rejection. Many people have learned to dim their light to fit in, to avoid envy, to prevent conflict. They have learned to live in silent mode, without taking up much space, without being noticed. And while this may have offered them a sense of protection at times, it has also disconnected them from their own vitality. Because when a person dims their shine, they gradually lose contact with their enthusiasm, their creativity, and their sense of purpose. Feminine energy flourishes when it gives itself permission to shine, not from ego, but from the genuine expression of who one is. To shine does not mean being perfect, nor having it all figured out, nor being liked by everyone. It means being aligned with what one thinks, feels, and does. And that alignment creates an energy that is perceived, that is felt, that transforms. A person who shines does not need to impose, because their presence already communicates strength, clarity, and inner beauty. Mario Alonso Puig speaks of shine as a quality that arises when there is coherence between the heart and action. According to him, when a person lives from what they love, when they express what they truly value, their body reflects it. The gaze changes, posture lifts, tone of voice gains a new quality. It is not superficial shine, but an energetic manifestation of internal connection. And this connection not only impacts on a personal level, but also changes how others respond. Authentic shine does not provoke competition, but inspiration. It does not cause rejection, but attraction. Shine is also a word that invites stepping out of the shadow of comparison. In a world where everything seems to be measured, where other success often triggers insecurity, shining from one's own place is an act of freedom, because it means recognizing that there's no need to resemble anyone, to meet anyone's standards, to follow anyone's path. It means embracing what is unique, what is different, what is even imperfect, but doing it with presence. And that authenticity, when sustained, becomes a beacon for others. A concrete example can help visualize the effect of this word. Let's imagine Marcos, a person with great talent for writing, but who kept his texts in a drawer for years. He always found excuses. It's not the right time. I'm not good enough. Who would want to read this? His light was on, but covered by layers of doubt and self-sabotage. One day, in a moment of personal reflection, he wrote a single sentence: "Today I allow myself to shine with who I am." And though at first it was just a line in a notebook, that phrase became a daily intention. He began sharing short texts, first with friends, then on social media. He wasn't seeking approval, just expressing what he felt. Over time, his energy changed. He became more confident, more open, more enthusiastic. His environment noticed. People started inviting him to collaborate, to teach, to speak about his process. Nothing changed on the outside until something changed within. He decided to shine. Shine is not something to be obtained. It is something to be released. It has always been inside, but often it's been covered by fears, beliefs, wounds. That is why working with this word is also an emotional cleansing process. It is about observing what things, thoughts, or bonds have dimmed that light. It is asking what parts of oneself are hidden out of fear of being judged. It is starting to integrate everything that has been left out, everything that has been silenced. Because when those parts are recovered, the shine intensifies. From the bodily perspective, shine also manifests. A person who shines does not necessarily have a striking appearance, but as something that sets them apart, a way of walking, of looking, of being present that conveys confidence. It is not about seeking attention, but about inhabiting the body with dignity, with grace, with truth. The body does not lie. If there is inner light, it shows. If there is joy, it shows too. If there is connection, it is felt. And all of that has to do with the daily decision to no longer hide. An effective practice to work with the word shine is to repeat it in moments when one would usually shrink back. For example, before an important meeting, when speaking in a group, when expressing an idea that could generate resistance. Silently repeating, "I shine with who I am. My light deserves to be seen. I do not hide." These affirmations, when supported with deep breathing and an open posture, begin to install a new way of being in the world. And with time, that way becomes natural. It may also be helpful to revisit personal stories associated with shine. What happened in the past when one tried to stand out? Was there criticism, mockery, rejection? Often, the fear of shining has ancient roots worth observing with compassion, because only then can another narrative be chosen. A narrative where shining is not dangerous, but necessary. Not a threat, but a contribution. Not vanity, but an expression of the soul. From the spiritual perspective, shining also holds deep meaning. It is recognizing that every being has a unique spark, a particular frequency that connects them to something greater. That spark cannot be compared or replicated. It can only be expressed. And when it is, it brings something to the world. Choosing to shine is, in that sense, an act of service, because it allows others to also remember their own light. A person who shines from authenticity does not overshadow, but inspires, does not impose, but invites. And that creates a multiplying effect that transcends the individual. It is important to clarify that shining does not mean always being okay, nor always happy, nor having all the answers. It means being real, even in vulnerability. It means showing what one feels, without decorations or masks. It means holding on to dignity even in pain, because there's a kind of shine that ignites precisely in darkness. It is the light that is born from self-knowledge, from acceptance, from the integration of one's shadows. And that light lasts longer than any appearance. Working with this word can begin with something as simple as a gesture. Looking in the mirror each morning and saying with softness and determination, "Today I shine with who I am." And holding that phrase while breathing deeply, while connected with the body, while visualizing a day lived from presence. It can also be used as a guide to make decisions. Asking oneself, when facing an important choice, does this let me shine or dim me? That question, though simple, can bring great clarity. Another way to activate shine is to celebrate one's achievements without minimizing them, to recognize what one does well, to give thanks for the gifts one has, to share with others what might be useful. Shine grows stronger when it is shared, because it is not meant to be kept, but to expand. And the more it is shared from truth, the more it lights the path for others. Shining is also a choice that is renewed. There will be days when everything feels clouded, when insecurity returns, when energy is low. It is part of the process. It is not about holding a luminous image all the time. It is about remembering that the light doesn't go out. It is just sometimes covered, and it is always possible to rekindle it with a word, with a gesture, with an intention. So every time shine is said, let it be from that certainty. Not because there's anything to prove, but because it is time to fully inhabit one's own light. Because there's no need to hide anymore. Because life does not need copies or reduced versions. It needs beings who dare to shine, not to be more than others, but be completely themselves. Take a moment and respond with total honesty. In what moments have you felt you dim your shine not to discomfort others, to fit in or to avoid standing out too much? Write it in the comments beginning with the phrase, I dim my shine when, and make your story a form of release. Sometimes by naming it, we let it go, and others, by reading you, may find the courage to shine again too. The seventh powerful word is, I give thanks. Of all the words that transform feminine energy, this one has an almost immediate ability to shift the internal vibration of the person who speaks it. To give thanks is not simply a reaction to something positive. It is a conscious choice of focus, a way of interpreting life from abundance, even in the midst of challenge. When one says, I give thanks with intention, perception is reconfigured, judgment is deactivated, control is released, and space opens for a higher energy, broader, more connected to the present. Gratitude does not eliminate difficulties, but frames them differently. It does not erase what hurts, but it prevents that from defining the whole experience. Feminine energy, in its highest expression, does not live in complaint, in comparison, or in emotional scarcity. It lives in the deep recognition of what already is, of what is present, of what has been received even without having asked for it. To give thanks is an act of emotional maturity, because it means seeing beyond the obvious, finding meaning in the everyday, and affirming that even in imperfection, there is beauty and learning. From neuroscience, Mario Alonso Puig has shared in many of his talks how gratitude has real effects on the body and brain. Giving thanks activates areas related to empathy, connection, emotional self-regulation. It has been proven that those who practice gratitude consistently have lower cortisol levels, sleep better, experience more satisfaction in their relationships, and develop greater resilience. This happens because the act of giving thanks is not simply mental. It is physiological, emotional, spiritual. It is a vibration that goes through the whole system. When one says, I give thanks, one is training the brain to focus on what is there instead of what is missing. And that simple difference creates a deep change in the way of living. Instead of only seeing lack, one begins to recognize opportunities. Instead of staying trapped in what doesn't work, one can see more clearly what to support, what does nourish, what does accompany. This attitude of gratitude is not passive or conformist. On the contrary, it is a starting point for more conscious, more aligned, more wise decisions. Gratitude also has a direct impact on self-esteem. When one gives thanks for who one is, for what one has achieved, for what one has overcome, a stronger, more real, more compassionate inner image is reinforced. Many people are used to demanding too much of themselves, to seeing themselves harshly, to focusing their attention on what they still lack. But when one begins to practice self-gratitude, something changes. The judgment softens. The gaze becomes kinder. The path is revalued. And from that energy, it is much easier to connect with others from love rather than from need. An example can help to understand how the word, I give thanks, can shift a person's internal energy. Imagine Daniel, someone who went through a major loss and became trapped in a cycle of pain, resentment, and frustration. For months, his focus was on what he no longer had, on what was missing, on what had gone wrong. One day, with no intention of practicing anything spiritual, he sat in front of a notebook and wrote, almost with resignation, 3 things he could still be thankful for. He felt nothing at that moment. But the next day, he repeated the exercise. And on the third, 2, little by little, his perspective changed. Not because the pain disappeared, but because he started to have more internal space. Space to see the light that still surrounded him. Space to feel that not everything was lost. Over time, that daily act of writing, I give thanks, began to rebuild his emotional strength. And not only that, It helped him reconnect with love, with humor, with the desire to live fully. The practice of giving thanks can start with the simplest things. Thanking the body for supporting, thanking the air for being, thanking a kind word, a hot meal, a moment of calm. The more specific the gratitude, the more it anchors in reality and the more power it has to shift the internal state. It's not about forcing gratitude for what still hurts, but about finding, even in the midst of chaos, a spark of presence. To give thanks is many times simply to recognize, I am here, I'm still breathing, and something inside me still has strength to carry on. From feminine energy, to give thanks is also a way of receiving. Because by giving thanks, one recognizes that something has arrived, that something has been offered, that something is touched. It is a subtle way of saying, I am available for what is good. And that availability, sustained over time, transforms the vibration. A grateful person is not a conformist person. It is someone who has chosen to connect with the flow of life instead of resisting it. It is someone who finds in each experience a lesson, in each bond a possibility, in each moment an opportunity to grow. Mario Alonso Puig has emphasized that gratitude is a form of love, not idealized love, but practical, embodied love. To love is to thank the other for who they are, for what they contribute, even for what they reflect. In a relationship, to give thanks does not mean to ignore conflicts, but to have the maturity to also see what works, what builds, what nurtures. Many times, a word of gratitude can deactivate an argument, can heal a wound, can open a closed door, not because it has a magical effect, but because it reconnects people with their most human part. In the personal sphere, practicing gratitude also allows the past to be integrated with more peace. To thank what has been lived, even the difficult, is a way to close cycles, to regain personal power, to let go of victimhood. One does not thank pain for its own sake, but for what it revealed, for what it strengthened, for what it taught. This perspective does not always come immediately, but if the word, I give thanks, is held as a compass, sooner or later a deeper understanding is reached of all that has been part of the path. A practice recommended by Mario Alonso Puig is to keep an energetic gratitude journal. Unlike a conventional journal, this one is not focused only on events, but on sensations. What emotion do you thank today? What learning do you thank today? What gesture do you thank today, even if it was small? This type of exercise helps refine perception, connect with the subtle, expand sensitivity. And when sensitivity expands, feminine energy becomes more receptive, more intuitive, more alive. Saying I give thanks also changes the way one speaks and thinks. It becomes harder to complain all the time, to criticize automatically, to victimize oneself without pause. Because the habit of gratitude creates a different way of narrating reality. One can speak of a hard day and, at the same time, thank the coffee shared with someone. One can mention a conflict and, at the same time, thank the opportunity to have expressed something that was held in. This way of thinking does not deny the complex, but integrates it from a wiser place. The word, I give thanks, also has a vibration of closure. To give thanks is, many times, the best way to let go. When one gives thanks for a phase, a relationship, an experience, one honors what has been lived and opens space for what is new. It is a form of luminous farewell, of active acceptance, of loving surrender. And this way of releasing, when sincere, generates a peace that cannot be faked. Finally, it is important to remember that gratitude is not about obligation nor moral correction. To give thanks is not a rule, it is a choice, a decision that is renewed day by day. Even when it is hard, even when there seems to be nothing to be thankful for. Sometimes, in the darkest moments, gratitude can simply be holding on to hope, thanking that there is still a spark, thanking that there is still a path, thanking that, even though it hurts, one still feels. And that, in itself, is already light. The eighth powerful word is soft. It is a word that has been misunderstood, even underestimated, in many cultures and contexts. In a world that rewards speed, strength, firmness, and immediacy, softness is often seen as weakness, passivity, or lack of character. But in reality, being soft is a form of silent strength. Being soft implies mastering a very refined energy, capable of holding, containing, and transforming without the need to impose. Authentic softness does not break easily. It adapts, it molds, but without losing its essence. And therein lies its power. Feminine energy, when in balance, is expressed with powerful softness. It is not submission nor withdrawal. It is an ability to move with grace, to communicate without violence, to respond without reacting, to create solid bonds from a calm presence. Saying soft is a reminder that not everything needs to be forced, that there's no need to shout to be heard, that one doesn't need to tense up to defend oneself. Softness, well understood, is a deeply intelligent emotional strategy because it allows energy to be conserved, the center to be maintained, and at the same time to reach others without raising barriers. Mario Alonso Puig has insisted in many of his talks on how the emotional tone with which we relate to others has a direct impact on the nervous system, both one's own and others. Soft words, soft gestures, soft presence have the ability to regulate, to calm, to create openness. On the contrary, constant harshness in both language and body creates resistance, conflict, and exhaustion. Learning to be soft is not a renunciation of firmness. It is a deeper way to exercise it. Softness is not lack of limits. It is the way those limits are conveyed with clarity and respect, without the need for rigidity. Practicing softness is an act of awareness. It involves being present in how one moves, how one touches, how one speaks, how one looks at oneself and at others. It is a way of inhabiting the body and life without violence. And that starts from within. Often, the inner voice has become harsh, critical, impatient. It has learned to push, to pressure, to demand. Incorporating the word soft into the inner dialogue can change the relationship of oneself at the root. Instead of saying you should do better, one can say you're doing the best you can. Instead of pushing through exhaustion, one can ask, what do you need now? This softness does not weaken, but strengthens through care. An example can illustrate how softness transforms from the inside out. Let's imagine Clara, a person used to self-demand. Always busy, always solving, always controlling. Her energy, though efficient, was tense, sharp. People respected her, but also avoided her. She felt she had to stay on constant alert for things to go well, until in a personal growth training, she heard a phrase that stopped her. Don't need a harden to survive. It was a revelation. She began to explore what it meant to be soft. She didn't know how at first, but she started to lower her voice when speaking, to move more slowly, to leave space to breathe between one activity and another. She didn't stop being firm, but began to be kind to herself. Over time, she noticed her relationships improve, her body ached less, her mind was clearer, and she understood that softness didn't take her away from her power, but brought her closer to her center. Biologically, the body responds immediately to softness. A caress, a deep breath, a warm word generate neurological responses of safety and well-being. The autonomic nervous system, which regulates tension and calm, is positively activated when the environment is soft. But one doesn't need to wait for the environment to change. You yourself can become that environment. You can choose to move more calmly, speak without rushing, touch with awareness, look with openness. And with that, the energy shifts. Softness is also a language. It's the way the body expresses itself when it doesn't need to defend. It's the way one responds to a hostile look with firmness, but without violence. It's the way to correct without hurting, to guide without dominating, to love without suffocating. In relationships, softness builds bridges. It creates a space where the other can show themselves without fear, where no armor is needed to be heard, and that generates deep intimacy, real connection, because it's based on respect, on listening, on containment. Saying soft is then a way to remind oneself there's another way to be. You don't have to run all the time. You don't have to prove everything. You don't have to tense up to belong. There's another way. Kinder, more sensitive, more human. And that doesn't mean giving up what you want. It means choosing the path you want to take to get there. Feminine energy, when expressed through softness, has an enveloping quality. It is the energy that knows how to care without absorbing, that knows how to look without invading, that knows how to love without demanding. That energy doesn't need to be explained. It is felt, and often It is the one that deeply transforms those around. Because it doesn't push, it doesn't overwhelm. It simply is. And in its mere presence, it teaches, inspires, comforts. A simple practice to integrate this word is to observe how you react in moments of stress or conflict. Does your voice rise? Does your body tense? Do your words harden? In those moments, mentally repeating soft can act like a switch. It can help you return to your center, respond from another place. You can also practice softness in the body when touching your face, getting dressed, walking. These everyday gestures, when done with awareness, retrain the system to exit survival mode and enter a more regulated, more connected state. Softness is also a form of presence. When someone is truly present, they don't need to be loud. Their mere attention, their calm, their gaze already have an effect. This is a form of authority very different from control or fear. It is an authority born from self-care, inner coherence, emotional clarity. And those who embody it often don't need many words, because their energy speaks. From a more symbolic perspective, softness is like water. It doesn't resist, but it doesn't give up either. It doesn't crash, but it doesn't stop. It adapts, finds its path, and over time can shape even the hardest stone. This is also how emotional softness works. It doesn't aim to defeat the other, but to understand them. It doesn't always want to win, but to build. And in that process, it transforms without making noise. The word soft can be used as a guide throughout the day. Upon waking, repeat it as an intention. Today I choose to be soft with myself, with my thoughts, with my words. In tense moments, use it as an anchor. Soft, return to center. And at the end of the day, as a kind reflection. Where could I have been softer? Where was I and it felt good? This kind of reflection doesn't seek to judge, but to cultivate a more conscious presence. Softness also includes how one relates to time. Often, hurry creates unnecessary tension. Everything must be resolved now, decided now, understood now. But when softness is practiced, it is also accepted that everything has its rhythm, that some processes mature in silence, that answers arrive when we stop forcing them, that not everything important screams. Some decisions are born from rest, from silence, from stillness, and to hear them, you must be soft with time. Finally, being soft also means recognizing the value of what is fragile, not to idolize vulnerability, but to honor it, because what is fragile also contains beauty, also teaches, also transforms. And many times, it is in the softest moments when the deepest truths are spoken, the most lasting bonds are formed, the greatest growth occurs. Softness is not a destination, but a practice. It's not about achieving an ideal state, but about reminding oneself again and again that there's another way to be in the world, that not everything has to hurt, that not everything needs to be urgent, that there's also strength in what is quiet, power in what is calm, wisdom in what is not imposed. Saying soft is then a choice of how one wants to live, of how one wants to love, of how one wants to be. The ninth powerful word is, I am. At first glance, it may seem like a basic common word, used automatically to indicate location or condition, but in reality, it holds a depth that, when consciously explored, has the power to radically transform a relationship a person has with themselves and with the present. Saying, I am, is a powerful affirmation of existence. It is a recognition that one occupies a place, that one is living a moment, that one is experiencing a specific emotion or sensation. It is a declaration of presence. And presence is, without a doubt, one of the most attractive and transformative qualities that exist. In a society that constantly pushes toward doing, toward projecting, toward proving, many people have disconnected from being. They live on autopilot, repeating routines, reacting to stimuli, trapped in mental rush. But when a person says consciously, I am, something anchors. That inertial flow is interrupted. One returns to the body. One returns to the now. And in that now, a different space opens up, more real, more livable. Being is not just a physical condition. It is an energetic attitude that determines how each moment is faced. Feminine energy needs being in order to manifest fully. because that energy doesn't live in future anticipation or past nostalgia. It lives in connection with what is happening here and now. It lives in breath, in felt emotion, in the intuition that can only be heard when one is truly present. Saying I am is to declare that one hasn't left, that one hasn't abandoned their body, that one hasn't gotten lost in their thoughts. It's saying I am here with myself in this moment, and that presence is felt. It transmits. It radiates a silent strength that needs no explanation. Mario Alonso Puig has reflected many times on the impact of presence in relationships, in mental health, and in decision-making. Being present not only improves the quality of attention and communication, but also allows the body to function more coherently. When a person is scattered, worried, or disconnected, their nervous system goes on alert, their thoughts fragment, and their energy scatters. But when they are present, everything aligns. The voice calms, the gaze focuses, the breath deepens. And from there, energy flows with more clarity. Working with the word I am means taking on a new kind of emotional responsibility. It means stopping the blame on the environment, the past, or others for one's internal state, and instead recognizing what one feels with honesty. I am sad. I am tired. I am at peace. I am nervous. Not as a fixed label, but as a declaration of presence that allows for non-judgmental observation. Many people have learned to disconnect from what they feel out of fear of being vulnerable, not knowing how to manage their emotions, or simply because they were never taught to inhabit themselves. But by declaring, I am, awareness is activated, one that allows feeling without drowning, observing without getting lost, understanding without distortion. A concrete example can illustrate how this word changes the relationship with oneself. Let's imagine Elena, a person who tends to avoid conflict, always smiling, always available, always busy, but also deeply anxious, even if she didn't show it. In every uncomfortable situation, she would mentally repeat phrases like, it's nothing or I'm fine, even though she knew it wasn't true. In a therapy session, she was given a simple exercise, say out loud what she was really feeling. Started with the word, I am. At first, it was hard for her, but one day, after an argument with someone close, she paused, took a breath and said, I am upset. I am frustrated. I am sad. That small phrase changed her experience. It didn't make her feel worse. On the contrary, it brought her clarity, relief, and strength, because by naming what was happening, she could process it instead of repressing it. I am also has a spiritual dimension. It is the root of many contemplative and meditative practices. Being here now fully, not try to control the experience, but to inhabit it, not seeking immediate answers, but allowing a moment to reveal what it has to offer. In this deep presence, feminine energy finds one of its most authentic channels of expression, because intuition can only be heard in the present. Emotions can only be transformed in the present. The body can only heal in the present. And all of that begins with an I am. The practice of I am can be integrated into daily life in many ways. For example, upon waking, instead of jumping straight into mental activity, one can pause and say, I am waking up. I am breathing. I am here, starting the day. This simple phrase aligns awareness with the body. During the day, it can be practiced in moments of transition, at the start of a meeting, while eating, while walking, while listening to someone. Saying internally, I am, helps return to center, avoid distractions, and connect more deeply with what is being done. At the end of the day, one can reflect by saying, I am closing the day. I am acknowledging what I lived. I am available to rest. These affirmations are not empty rituals. They are anchors that return attention to the present. It is also useful to explore how the word I am has been used automatically or even negatively. Often people say, I am not well, I am stuck. I am alone as a statement of identity rather than as a passing observation. But I am should not define the self, only acknowledge the state. It is not the same to say I am sad as I am a sad person. The first allows for movement, transformation. The second fixes an identity. That's why practicing I am with awareness also means learning to speak of what is being lived without clinging to it, like someone watching a cloud pass, with no need to get trapped in it. The word I am also holds deep power in relationships. Often in emotional connections, people argue or disconnect not because of what happens, but because they don't say from where they are speaking. Learning to begin with I am can completely change the dynamic. Instead of accusing or demanding, saying I am hurt, I am confused, I am happy, I am open to listen to you creates a space of more honest and safe dialogue. Because it's not about convincing the other, but about sharing from a real presence. And that presence is the foundation of all true intimacy. From the body, I am is also expressed in posture, in breath, in the way one walks, looks, or touches. A person who is present moves differently. They don't need to fill the space, but they inhabit it with clarity. They don't need to dominate, but they generate influence. They don't need to say much, but when they do, their words carry weight, because they come from an inhabited inner place, not from dispersion. This way of being is deeply magnetic, and not because of what is said or done, but because of the quality of energy that is radiated. In many ways, I am is the word that sustains all others, because without presence, the other words lose strength. You cannot deserve if you are not connected to your own value. You cannot bloom if you don't realize you are already in the process. You cannot trust if your mind is trapped in fear. You cannot receive if you are not emotionally available. You cannot play if you are not in touch with the lightness of the moment. You cannot shine if you don't take up your space. You cannot be gentle if you are dissociated from your body. All of that requires presence, and presence is activated with an I am. That's why, although simple, this word is a door, one that opens inward, that doesn't require doing anything different, but being in a different way, being in the body, being in feeling, being in the word, being in the gaze, being in the now. And from there, everything else takes on new meaning. Life stops being a race and becomes an experience. Relationships stop being strategies and become encounters. The mind stops being a battlefield and becomes a space of observation. I am is then a daily practice, a way to return to the inner home, a way to regain center, reduce anxiety, and increase clarity. No external element is needed to practice it, just a decision to return again and again to the present moment, because everything begins here. Everything transforms here. Everything is lived here. And that is recognized with one word, I am. The 10th powerful word is I am soy. This word, although short, holds a singular power. It is perhaps the most definitive of all, the most direct, the one that acts as a core from which identity is built. Saying I am is not simply naming a quality. It is declaring an inner truth, embodying an energy, assuming a presence. Every time someone says I am, they activate a set of meanings, beliefs, emotions, and decisions that shape the image they have of themselves and therefore the energy they project into the world. Unlike words like I have or I do, which relate to the external, to what is possessed or executed, I am points to the center. It is the root of self-image, the essence of what is recognized as one's own, as authentic, as non-transferable. That is why it is a word that must be used with great awareness. Because what follows in I am becomes emotional, mental, and energetic programming. If someone repeats, I am insecure, I am clumsy, I am invisible, they are holding on to a narrative that directly affects their emotions, their choices, their relationships. But if they choose affirmations like, I am enough, I am brave, I am love, they are building a version of themselves that allows them to expand, to blossom, and connect with much higher energy. Feminine energy is deeply impacted by the use of I am, because this energy is not based on what is achieved, but on what is embodied. A person connected to their feminine energy does not need to prove their worth. They simply inhabit it. They do not need to demand recognition. Their presence already conveys inner strength, and that presence begins with a conscious affirmation of who one is, not what is shown, not what others expect, what one truly is from the root, from the soul. Mario Alonso Puig has often explained how the language we use to define ourselves influences not only our mind, but also our biology. When a person repeatedly tells themselves negative affirmations like, I am incapable or I am weak, their body responds by releasing stress hormones, closing neuroreceptors, weakening the immune system. On the other hand, when positive, coherent, loving affirmations are used, the body responds with openness, vitality, and balance. Identity is not a fixed structure. It can be shaped, transformed, reprogrammed. And I am is the main tool to do it. Working with this word requires courage, because it also involves letting go of the labels others have imposed. Since childhood, many people have received messages that were recorded as truths. You are too sensitive. You are complicated. You are hard to love. And without realizing it, they've made those phrases part of their identity. Repeating them for years turns them into something familiar, though not necessarily true. The work of transformation begins when each of those definitions is questioned and new ones are chosen, not from fantasy, but from authenticity, from what one wants to be, from what one already is, but hasn't yet recognized. An example can help visualize the power of this word. Let's imagine Samuel, a person who for many years fell out of place. In every group, in every relationship, he would adapt his behavior to fit in. His inner dialogue was full of phrases like, I am invisible, I am too quiet, I am not interesting. Even though his surroundings never explicitly told him this, he held on tightly to those beliefs. One day, during a personal development training, he decided to write a list of new I am statements that represented him better. It was hard at first, not for lack of qualities, but out of habit. But with time, he wrote, I am sensitive, I am observant, I am creative, I am a voice that deserves to be heard. He started repeating those phrases every morning, not as a magic formula, but as a way to remind himself of what he wanted to embody. Over time, his way of speaking changed. So did his energy. He began to show himself more confidently. He didn't become someone else. He became himself. This example shows that I am is not about inventing a personality, but about remembering a truth that may have been forgotten or repressed. The power of this word lies in the fact that it defines the place we live from, because when the I am changes, everything changes. Decisions change, relationships change, the way we react to challenges changes. Posture changes, voice changes, the gaze changes. Not because one is pretending, but because one is inhabiting a new identity, freer, more coherent, more authentic. The practice of I am can be integrated very concretely into daily life. One of the most effective ways is to choose an affirmation each week and repeat out loud, upon waking, during the day, and before sleeping. Affirmations like, I am capable of supporting myself with love. I am a channel of peace. I am worthy of being loved. I am light, even in darkness. What matters is that the phrase is not just beautiful, but that it holds real meaning for the one saying it. That it aligns with a personal transformation process, and that it is repeated with awareness, with intention, with presence. Another useful practice is to observe what phrases follow I am in everyday language. Many times, without noticing, we say things like, I'm a mess, I'm dumb, I'm terrible at this. Detecting these phrases and consciously replacing them with kinder ones is a way to reprogram the unconscious. It's not about denying difficulties, but about no longer defining identity through them. One can say, I made a mistake without saying I'm a failure. One can say, I'm still learning without saying I'm useless. This shift in language creates a shift in the way we relate to ourselves. From the body, I am is also expressed. The body responds to the identity that is affirmed. If someone says, I am weak, their posture shows it. If they say, I am confident, it does too. It's not about pretending. It's about aligning what is said with what is felt and with what is projected. That internal coherence generates an energy that others perceive without the need for words. And it is in that energy where much of personal magnetism resides. The word, I am, also holds deep spiritual power. In many traditions, the I am is considered to connect the individual being with the divine, with the essential, with that which transcends the physical. Saying, I am from the center, from the soul, is a form of prayer, of sacred affirmation. It is a way of declaring that one exists That one has value. That one is connected to something greater. It is a way of honoring life, not as a set of external circumstances, but as an inner expression that deserves to be acknowledged and fully lived. Feminine energy, when expressed from an authentic I am, is impossible to ignore because it does not seek to be accepted. It accepts itself. It does not seek validation. It validates itself through its coherence. It does not need to be admired. It admires itself in its truth, and that truth, when expressed without pride or fear, transforms both the one who embodies it and those around them. A person who says, I am, from their center, does not need to compete. They only need to be. And that being, sustained by a clear and loving identity, is an unstoppable force. Saying, I am, is then an invitation to choose each day who you want to be, not from duty, but from desire, not from others' expectations, but from inner fidelity. And that choice is made word by word, act by act, moment by moment. It is not a distant goal. It is a daily construction. By integrating this word into language, into the mind, into the body, into decisions, real transformation is activated, because everything affirmed through I am has a potential to become reality. I am is the root of all that is created. It is a foundation upon which every action, every relationship, every dream is built. And for that reason, using it consciously is one of the deepest ways to awaken personal power. Throughout this journey, we have explored 10 words that not only name states, but activate energies. 10 words that work as internal keys, as transformation codes. Maybe when you first heard them, you didn't pause long on each one, but now that we reach the end, you can begin to see how deeply connected they all are. It's no coincidence we began with worthiness, because without that starting point, it's very hard to open to the rest. Once someone recognizes they are worthy, they bloom. When they bloom, they trust. And from trust, they become capable of receiving. In receiving, they rediscover the lightness of play. And through play, their radiance reappears. When a person shines, they feel gratitude from a deeper place. And in that gratitude, they begin to treat themselves with gentleness. And in that gentleness, they can truly be present. And in being present, they can finally declare with strength, I am. Each of these words can be worked on individually, but their true power multiplies when they are linked together, when they are lived as a sequence, as a continuous transformation process. You can take this journey as a personal guide for the next 10 days. Each day, choose a word. Give it your attention. Write it. Repeat it. Observe yourself. Use in phrases. If you feel ready, even share it with someone close. You'll see how each word begins to unfold its meaning in a different way. More intimate, more alive, more yours. The impact of this work goes far beyond the mind. When you transform your language, you also transform your physiology. The body feels it. Posture shifts. The voice grows firmer. The gaze softens or lights up. These are not small changes. They are clear signals that something in your energy is evolving. On the emotional level, you begin to feel more connection with yourself. Less guilt, more self-compassion. On the spiritual level, a space of calm, purpose, and clarity opens up. Because when language becomes conscious, so does the way of inhabiting life. And there's something else. Something that happens silently, but very truly. When you change your language, the people around you begin to sense a change. Sometimes they can't explain it. It's not that you look different or that you're saying entirely new things. It's something deeper. It's a different vibration. A frequency you radiate without even realizing it. And that frequency touches, attracts, transforms. Someone might start to see you with different eyes. They may feel something different when you speak, when you're silent, when you walk into a room. Because your language, your true language, is no longer just verbal. It is energetic. It is coherent. It is magnetic. Often we look for external formulas to attract, to heal, to feel complete. But everything starts within, and language is the starting point. So if this video resonated with you, if you felt something inside shift or become clearer, I invite you to take the next step. Commit to this process. Make it yours. Make it daily. And make it with love. Because no one else can tell you who you are, but you can affirm it, word by word, day by day, And if you want to keep cultivating this energy, if you want to continue discovering tools to expand your inner power, your authentic magnetism, and your emotional balance, subscribe to the channel now and turn on the bell so you don't miss any content. We'll continue growing together here with more words, more practices, more wisdom to awaken everything that already lives inside you. Share this video with someone you feel needs to reconnect with their energy, their center, their light. Sometimes one word can be the beginning of a new path. And maybe today, you are that bridge for someone else. And as always, if you made it this far, you have a special gift. Comment the secret word of this video, which is I bloom. Write it in the comments, and in the next video, I'll send you a special shout out as a thank you for being here, for listening to yourself, and for continuing to choose growth. Thank you for sharing this space. Thank you for your time, your openness, your energy. Remember, you don't need to become someone else. You just need to remember yourself, because you already are. You're already here. You already can. I am. See you soon.